Nesse painel, a gente vai se inspirar ainda mais, espero, conhecendo outras universidades, outros professores que estão com essa missão, que nem vocês, de fazer com que o papel das instituições de ensino se engaje cada vez mais nessa agenda de impacto socioambiental. E eu tenho o maior prazer de apresentar a Marina Kim, que vai estar com a gente nesse painel. Ela é uma liderança global bastante inspiradora, que vem com essa agenda há muito tempo e com quem eu tive o privilégio de trabalhar na Ashoka Brasil, na Ashoka Global e na Ashoka Canadá. Seu trabalho de inovação social começou há quase 20 anos, apesar dessa cara dela de menina, quando ela ainda era estudante e viu um empreendedor social falar pela primeira vez na universidade. Desde então, ela tem colocado seus esforços, o seu propósito na mudança dos sistemas de ensino superior. Marina é cofundadora e diretora executiva da Ashoka University, mais conhecido para todo mundo como AshokaU, e aconchegante falando. É um braço muito importante da Ashoka, que ao longo dos 13 anos tem atuado intensamente nessa articulação, que hoje já são mais de 600 faculdades e universidades, mais de 6.000 indivíduos. E é legal falar indivíduos porque eles vão muito além de só os professores. A AshokaU tem essa cara de trazer gestores, reitores, professores, e eu acho que a gente se inspira muito nisso, com esse papel de não apenas incluir a temática, isso não é que é menos relevante, né? Mas não é só incluir a temática de empreendedorismo social, inovação social, impacto nos seus programas, mas, sobretudo, reconhecer que cada universidade ela tem esse papel de ser um verdadeiro ativador de um ecossistema local. Ele articula para além dos professores, dos gestores, dos alunos, ele trabalha muito com gestores públicos, com as cidades, com as aceleradoras, incubadoras. A gente quer essa ativação. Então, um Changemaker Campus, para nós, é essa ativação de ecossistemas locais. Muitos de vocês conhecem a história da Ashoka, mas para alguns é sempre bom contar que a Ashoka tem hoje mais de 3.500 empreendedores sociais no mundo todo, né? São acho que 90 países, já são 40 anos com essas histórias, e que nos inspira muito, e que a partir dessa conexão de levar esses empreendedores sociais para a sala de aula, para contar essas experiências, a gente foi vendo que tinha um trabalho muito relevante de fazer com as universidades. E o crescimento dessa reflexão que foi muito organizado pela Marina Kim, com as suas parceiras, e se transformou nesse programa, Ashoka University. E para contar com muito mais detalhes dessa trajetória, acabou meu tempo, dessa trajetória e seus aprendizados, a gente convida então a Marina Kim para estar aqui conosco e continuar. Marina, seja muito bem-vinda e obrigado por ter aceito esse convite durante o seu sabático. Então, muito obrigada, querida.
Bom dia, muito obrigada pela invitação a estar aqui. É uma honra. It's been a 20-year journey working in social innovation, education, and it's really just an honor to be here and reflect on what I've learned, what I've experienced, and hopefully some of this will be useful for all of you in your own institutions and work and leadership. You know, all of it starts with, for me, hope and a vision. And when I think of the higher education system, I think about the potential that schools, colleges, and universities have. When they were designed to be beacons of learning and inspiration and connection and possibility and curiosity, where students can be, you know, the word university comes from the Latin that students can find their place in the universe. And when I think of what an effective university education is, it really is giving them a sense of their purpose and meaning in life, in their professional work, in their academic work, and just in their communities. And of course, it also includes learning skills and knowledge and building networks, all of which will be carried through their life. And so over the years and generations and centuries, this very lofty vision and mission became institutionalized. And what happens when things get institutionalized is that you create structure, you create rigid structure, you can create resistance to change, deep hierarchies and silos. And policies that were made to embody a culture can become restrictive, that they can inhibit new thinking and new ideas, and they can embody a culture of risk, aversion, and fear. And also in higher education, competition and a drive to reinforce the hierarchy and the credentialism. And so all of this is a little bit antithetical to a lot of the work that I've been doing for many years, which is all about unlocking the potential of innovation, unlocking the potential of collaboration, unlocking the potential of a culture that is empowering and enabling and focused on students, not just focused on keeping the status quo. And so my vision and my hope is that higher education can become, again, a place that brings hope and inspiration and allows students, but also faculty and staff and senior leaders to lead and innovate and try new things and be courageous. And in that process, you replicate and have a generation that can also do that, rather than a system and an institution that puts people into boxes so that they can conform and perform and fit in. And so a lot of this is just, I'll speak a lot about institutions, but also the power and potential to reinvent them. And that's a big part of the work of AshokaU. You know, every major history, in history, every major innovation in every sector was done by people that other people said, you're crazy. This is not possible. You cannot do that. You shouldn't do that. And so when I think of, and without the people that were determined and did it anyway, despite criticism and despite resistance and despite doubt, we wouldn't have the internet. We wouldn't have electric cars. We wouldn't have space travel. We wouldn't have a lot of the medical technologies that can save our lives. And so when you put that into the higher education context, I really think a big part of what is important now is to think about courage and leadership and taking risks and pushing the institutions that we're part of to embrace courage and leadership and taking risks. And when this can happen, and I think there are unique moments where change is possible, and I think we're in one of those historical moments now because the whole world has changed so much that innovation is opening up with this space of possibility because everything is changing anyway. So why don't we change it to be better and more inclusive and more impactful? When I think of anyone working at the front lines of education, when I think of anyone working to try to make change and leading change in your own institutions, I actually just want to start by acknowledging you and acknowledging that it is a very heavy time in the world with the pandemic, with so much pain and suffering all around us. And you are in the key position, not in your work, to be a source of support to your students, a source of support to your colleagues, a source of support in your own families. And so that is just a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of energy, and it's a lot of emotional energy as well, which you cannot underestimate just how much goes into that. And so just, it is a particularly tough time to be an educator right now. And so I just want to acknowledge that you're not just surviving, you're trying to do ambitious work in a time that is already so difficult for so many. And so what I wanted to do is just spend 1 minute just thanking you and just saying, just you are doing important work and you are valuable and you are helping people in your families, in your communities, in your classrooms, in your universities. And that is so important, and it's just a lot of work. And so I also think, while I want to hopefully inspire people and hopefully increase your ambition level to think very, very big, I actually encourage you right now to simplify and streamline and think very, very small. And I encourage you also to think about the fact that this is a long game. This is a movement that we are all part of and building. This is something that will take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years even, because it is a process of continual reinvention and continual building and evolving. And so just to say, I encourage all of you to rest and encourage you to all take care of yourself. I encourage all of you to just thank yourself for all the work that you're doing and say it is enough. Whatever you're doing, it is enough. And then I actually think communities like this are so important because you can support each other. And that a lot of the strength I've gotten over the years to not give up and just keep going came from the communities that I was part of with fellow leaders and fellow educators and fellow collaborators. And so just to say, I think everything you're doing is important and valuable. And this is also very much part of something that will be many decades of work. And so please, in this time, please just take care of yourself and save yourself for the long impact that we're all going for. And so within that context, I wanted to just share a little bit of my story and the story of AshokaU, which is really the story of many people. And it's the story of the power of collaboration and the power of relationships to make change in institutions. And so my own point of inspiration is that when I was an undergraduate student 20 years ago at Stanford University, I learned about social entrepreneurship and social innovation, and I was incredibly inspired. I had never found an idea that was so perfect for what I wanted to do with my life. And to me, what I ultimately found was an identity. And so that's also something I just want to emphasize, that this community that you're part of is part of your identity, a professional identity, a professional community. And that is also why it's so, so, so important, because it goes deep. It's more than just work that you do. It's something that's deep in terms of your purpose and your meaning and the impact you're leaving in the world. And so I began at Ashoka 16 years ago, fresh out of the university space where I had been very inspired and I had done many different student leadership activities. And I learned there about systemic change. I learned there about the power of networks. I learned there about the power of identity. And I learned there about the power of what you can do when you have such a big vision that it is almost impossible to achieve in your lifetime. And that can be very motivating and inspiring for many, many, many people to want to be part of. And that people all want to be part of something that will leave a positive impact in the world. They all want to be part of something that is inspiring. And they want to be part of something that, where even if they're a small part or a bigger part, that they are part of something that aligns with their values. And so my first role at Ashoka was actually to work with a strategy working with universities before AshokaU. And so this was a strategy in partnership with Oxford's Center for Social Entrepreneurship, the Skoll Center for Social Entrepreneurship. And we basically built a faculty research network. And it was for research and teaching social entrepreneurship. And we gathered people, we talked, it was lots of big ideas, but the challenge was that it was just faculty, and we ended up having big ideas for the first half of every meeting. And then the second half of every meeting was all the reasons why we can't implement all these big ideas. And it was, we have no resources. No one understands what we're talking about at our university. We don't have anywhere to publish about social innovation and social entrepreneurship. We don't fit into any specific discipline. And many, many comments that you may have heard or may have thought at various points. These are still never-ending challenges. But for us, we spent 3 years doing this work. Our key insight was actually that, we we needed to think more systemically, and that just working with faculty, they were very much affected by issues that were bigger than them. They were affected by research publications that made decisions about what is important and valuable. They were affected by senior university leaders that made decisions about the university and school strategy and budgets and staffing. They were affected by what accreditors and the media thought was important. And so when we launched AshokaU in 2008, we wanted to take a very systemic approach. And so our approach was to say, let's be completely bold and completely audacious. At the time, most of the focus was on how can we launch a single course? How can we help a single professor? And then we said we would like to invite any university to transform the entire university and make social innovation a core part of the entire university, not just a single school, not just a single class, but really, how does this fit and align with the entire mission of the institution? How does it align with research strategy? How does it align with the structure of the university? How does this align with the culture of the university? How does this align with curriculum? And so, it's a never-ending process. And we have many examples at this point, but it's also hard. Nothing is perfect. Institutions are designed to have structure and resist change. And so we have found many different tricks and many different strategies to create massive change in many of the institutions we've partnered with. And higher education still has some inherent cultural elements that we constantly have to fight against. And so the work of AshokaU was to try to prove that it was possible to create a systemic approach so that faculty and staff could do programs and teach courses, but we had to have a strategy that included all the forces that affected faculty and staff. And honestly, we also wanted something that included the voices of students. I had come from being a student recently, before I came to Ashoka, and I knew that students have a very unique and powerful perspective. They are naturally innovative and fresh and think anything is possible and want everything now. And so I think there's something beautiful when harnessed about having a sense of huge possibility, huge ambition, and a sense of urgency. And then the challenge becomes how you navigate an institution that then likes to move everything much slower and likes to say everything that's not possible about big, ambitious ideas and likes to get all the evidence and metrics before they even consider launching anything new. And so I think we learned very quickly that you cannot just have an idea and implement it within a month at a university. There's much more complexity and many more processes to go through. And so we started in 2008 with 4 universities. And again, at the time, a key part of our strategy was saying that we needed full-time staff dedicated to supporting an institutional change strategy. This isn't something that you do on top of a full-time job as a professor. If you're a professor, the best thing you can do is support changing your curriculum within what you're trying to do anyway. But if you're really trying to change culture, strategy, and policy of the university, you need actual staffing to support a change process and lead a change process. And so a big part of our methodology was identifying innovators within the higher education institution, sometimes faculty, sometimes staff, often one of each. And we also required senior leaders, so deans, vice presidents, presidents, provosts, and boards of trustees members to prove that they were going to support and enable this work. And this work has been multiple years. And so a change process in a university is not a 2-month process. It's a multi-year process. And so we've just learned so much, and we've learned that every single university is different. There are many similar cultural elements. There are many similar challenges, but the assets of a university are so unique. The history of a university is so important and key to how you build a strategic case for how to make change in that university. And so from our beginning in 2008, where we had 4 universities, we've now worked very closely in this university-wide change process with over 40 universities in 13 countries. And then in the broader AshokaU network, where we host annual convenings, and we've brought people together to be part of a learning community, we've convened over 6,000 different educators and senior leaders from 600 different universities from over 50 countries around the world. And so what's exciting for me to see is that it is just a global community. It's a global movement. It is, you are not alone. And so what is so exciting for me in being here with you is that there is so much power in Brazil and in this community, in this network of ICE. You are in a very ripe, powerful moment of potential change. And so just to give one concrete example of one of the universities we've worked with, there's so many examples, but just the one that's top of my mind right now is Arizona State University. And so they are the largest public university in the United States, state funded, over, I think it's about nearly 70,000 students now. And their vision is for how many students they can include in education. They are very much focused on inclusion and access and building a healthy middle class. And their entire focus is on every single student being entrepreneurial, because their belief is that the key skill set and mindset for success in the 21st century for anyone is being entrepreneurial, being creative, having a vision, building a team, making things happen. And so they actually went through a multi-year change process when their president, Michael Crow, joined over 15 years ago. And he basically restructured the entire university. It's one of the most dramatic restructurings that has happened in the last couple of decades in the United States, where everything went from single schools and disciplines to everything being multidisciplinary. And so they were trying to model the university after the world. The world does not operate in discipline silos, even though higher ed likes to operate that way. And so they wanted to expose every student to a multidisciplinary, very entrepreneurial learning experience that they felt would set up everybody for a successful life after graduation. And they have just continued. What is inspiring is that so it's hard to make very dramatic institutional changes. It takes courageous leadership, it takes a bold vision, and it takes a decisive momentum. But when that momentum begins, when you finally get the momentum, then it generates a culture. And so what's happened is that faculty and leadership of all of the schools of Arizona State University now come because they want to innovate and lead change. They get innovative faculty coming there. And the less innovative faculty who don't want to be part of a bold, visionary institution leave by themselves. They'll find somewhere else to go where they fit in the culture. And so it actually has created a dynamic effect where many of the people who led schools at Arizona State University are now presidents of other universities because it was such a powerful training ground, because they practice such visionary leadership that is so rare in higher education, where a lot of leadership is management rather than innovation and creating what is the 21st century university model. I'd love to share some slides to just give a little bit of background about AshokaU's methodology. Just very quickly, there are many different learning outcomes, but AshokaU focuses on creativity, systems thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and empathy, which are derived from Ashoka's core skill sets for change making. And every university in our network has some set of these, and they evolve them and make them their own as well. But just wanted to articulate what we think is important for students to graduate with. Our big picture vision is of a world where universities are really graduating students that feel enabled to have systemic change and lead within whatever industry, within whatever organization they go into. But also, we hope that universities also value the communities that they're part of. And so in many of the strategic change initiatives that we work on, part of the strategy is around how to support students and skill development. And the other part is how can the assets of a university support the communities that they're part of. And this includes curriculum change, co-curricular change, having community-based partnerships, and just thinking about the power of research. There's so much that is powerful about the potential of higher education, and so much of the challenge to moving things for that full potential is a lot of the structures of the universities that have formed over many decades and generations. And so a big part of AshokaU is supporting the university. And again, it's never perfect, but it is a process of change, and it's about progress, is really thinking about, yes, you should have excellent teaching and research, but can you have a lens of how does that contribute to social impact in the world? It is important to have hierarchy in order for organizations to have function and effectiveness. But how can you increase the amount that all voices are valued and important? And Ashoka has a vision of a world where everyone is a change maker. Some of the best ideas will come from students, not just faculty. Some of the best ideas might come from community partners and not just staff who work at the university. And then we look at the disciplines and the silos. And again, just like the Arizona State University example, how can we have more interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity and more collaboration across the silos? And then just it is something that becomes quite rigid and static. So how can you create a culture where curriculum and courses and programs are constantly iterated and adapted and evolved? It just is important to think, you all are probably faculty or staff, but you are affected by forces that go beyond you. And so when you think about how to help yourself be as successful as possible, let's take a systemic approach. Let's think about the entire institution and what is possible to invite culture change, strategy change, and alignment at the senior levels of your school and of your university. And then also, how can we think beyond the universities? And that's where I think the ICE can do so much in terms of building partnerships with external influencers who can inspire and create pressure on your institutions to change. So some of those influencers might be media. Higher education definitely likes positive attention. And so glory and status and positive affirmation about excellence and innovation is something that you can do with media attention. The final thing I just wanted to say is that my journey with AshokaU has shown me that it is possible to change institutions. It is possible, particularly when you have a network where one institution starts to be successful, that helps all of your institutions be more successful. When one person in the network learns something or creates something or leads something, all of you start to benefit from the assets and the resources of everyone and all the knowledge and all the resources. And so just to say, good luck, boa sorte, and really count on me and AshokaU as learning partners and as part of an extended learning community. We have been doing this work for 13 years with hundreds of institutions, many lessons learned, and we are so excited to see what you will create and innovate and lead.